Good morning. Welcome to our study this morning. We're continuing our look at deception in the book of the Revelation. And we are in our subtopic, which will essentially be our main topic. And it is on the Antichrist. The Antichrist has 15 titles in the Bible. Only one place is he named the Antichrist, and that's in 1 John chapter 2. In the book of Revelation, he is known as the beast that comes out of the sea. In Isaiah, he's mentioned 5 times as the wicked one, the spoiler, the extortioner, the king of Babylon, and the Assyrian. Pay close attention to those last 2. They will figure predominantly in our look at determining the identity of the Antichrist. In the book of Ezekiel, he is known as Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. In the book of Daniel, he's known as the little horn, the king of fierce countenance, the prince that shall come, the king of the north, and the beast, just like in Revelation chapter 13. In 2 Thessalonians, he's called the man of sin and the son of perdition and that wicked one. So those are the only 15 titles of the Antichrist as given in the scriptures. There are numerous other allusions to him that we will cover as we go through this topic. So this is our primary study now for the next few weeks. And I think if you see your screen with this title on it, if you look just above the T on the beast that's there, the leopard-like beast that's there, you'll see the little horn to the left, and in front of it, you'll see the big horn. And that will, of course, figure into our study as we look, first of all, at the book of Daniel to see how we can identify and follow the course of the Antichrist. So let's begin with our slides and move forward with it. Deception in the Revelation, book classroom 3, the beast. And this is entitled Introducing the Beast. The first appearance of the beast in Revelation is in Revelation chapter 6, when John says that he watched when the Lamb opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures say with a voice like thunder, come forth. And I looked, and behold, a white horse, and its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. A lot of clues here that we'll see, and we'll see when these things take place. And we need to understand that he is in his preparatory stage to becoming the beast. He is not yet the beast. He is still at this point a conquering leader, military and political. His next appearance is in Revelation 13:1. So we go 7 chapters, 7 chapters without any mention of the Antichrist. And this reads, and I saw the beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. And the beast that I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. A lot to unpack here. You'll notice in this lesson that I am essentially going to give you all of the different appearances and the different information in preview for what we will do when we look at all of these things in detail. Much like last week where I gave you the outline of the book of Daniel, showing you all the principal parts of the book of Daniel, so that when we cover them in greater detail, like we will today, you'll be able to reference in your memory storage the things that we talked about last week, and you'll be able to put them in place in a better way. It'll lock it into your memory a little bit better. Now let's look at the dragon, the one who empowers the beast. He is found in Revelation 12:7. A war occurred in heaven. Michael and his angels waged war with the dragon, and the dragon and his angels waged war. And he was not strong enough, nor was a place found for him any longer in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, the ancient serpent, the one being called devil, slanderer, Satan, adversary, the one leading astray or deceiving the whole inhabited earth. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. So here we see that the dragon, Satan, the adversary, was in heaven up until this time when he will be thrown down to the earth. And we learn later that he is full of wrath because of it, because he no longer has access to heaven, and he no longer has his opportunity to replace God in the universe, in the creation. Now we're going to go back to the beast and see the next appearance of the beast in Revelation 13:3. One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. And they worshiped the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast, and who can fight against it?" A couple of clues here. The beast is an it, okay? Is an it. And we'll see, I'll give you little hints as we go along, but I'm not going to expand on a lot of things because we just need to get through and see all of these things in the Revelation and then our backdrop in the book of Daniel. And the beast was given a mouth uttering haughty and blasphemous words, and it was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to utter blasphemies against God, blaspheming his name and his dwelling, that is, those who dwell in heaven. And it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them, and authority was given it over every tribe and people and language and nation. And all who dwell on earth will worship it, everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. And you will have the ears to hear these things as we go through the book. The book of Revelation is actually a fairly easy book to understand if we allow the scriptures to interpret the scriptures. What we have had over several centuries is men interpolating and performing what we call eisegesis, or putting their own thoughts, their own ideas, their own biases into the book of Revelation, and in that way, hiding the meaning of what is said. We're going to look at the scriptures and the scriptures alone without human speculation. If anyone is to be taken captive, to captivity he goes. If anyone is to be slain with the sword he must be slain. Here is a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. So this is a little side note that John writes at the instruction of Jesus to tell the people of the revelation, the time frame of the revelation, that if you deserve to be taken captivity, you will be taken captive. If you deserve to be slain, you will be slain. Here's a call for the endurance and faith of the saints. The saints, the true saints, known as the remnant, will have faith and endurance and will not succumb to the beast. And they are the ones who will inherit the land, the kingdom of the millennium. Understanding the beast and from whence the beast comes. We're going to now look at the passages in Daniel that reference the beast or its background, its origins. Okay, so we start with Daniel 2, chapter 1, with Nebuchadnezzar's dream. You'll recall Nebuchadnezzar's dream. It's a famous Bible story. Probably haven't ever looked at it from more than the children's book aspect, unless you have studied this in the past. And in the second year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. He could not sleep because of the troubling nature of the dreams. And the sovereign, the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, gave orders to call the magicians, the astrologers, and the practicers of witchcraft, and the Chaldeans to declare to the sovereign, the king, his dreams. So they came and stood before the sovereign. He called a meeting of all of the magicians, all of the magic people. And the sovereign said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is troubled to know the dream. And the Chaldeans spoke to the sovereign in Aramaic, O sovereign, live forever. Relate the dream to your servants, and we shall reveal the interpretation. Well, what did the sovereign, what did the king, what did Nebuchadnezzar say? My spirit is troubled to know the dream. He knew that he'd had a nightmare, but he couldn't remember it. So he wanted them to tell him what his dream was and what it meant. The sovereign answered and said to the Chaldeans, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream and its interpretation to me, your limbs shall be taken from you and your houses made dunghills. But if you reveal the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive gifts and rewards and great esteem from me. So reveal to me the dream and its interpretation. They answered again and said, let the sovereign relate to his servants the dream, and we shall reveal his interpretation. The sovereign answered and said, I know for certain that you're trying to gain time, because you see that my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me, there's only one decree for you. They were hoping that he would remember his dream and that then he would tell them the dream so that they could make up their interpretation of the dream. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me. You have agreed among yourselves to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed when I remember my dream. So relate the dream to me, then I shall know that you shall accurately reveal its interpretation for me. The Chaldeans answered the sovereign and said, there is no one on earth who is able to reveal the matter of the sovereign, because no sovereign, master, or ruler has ever asked a matter like this of any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. Kind of reminds you of fortune tellers and those kind of people. They have to know some information before they can make up their interpretation. And the matter that the sovereign is asking is difficult, and there is no other who is able to reveal it to the sovereign except the Elohim, whose dwelling is not with flesh, the God whose dwelling is not with flesh. Because of this, the sovereign was enraged and very wroth, and gave orders to destroy all the wise ones of Babel. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise ones. And they sought Daniel and his companions. You know his companions. We know them as Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. That's not actually their names. I think we'll see their names coming up later. Yeah, we see their names coming up later. But that's how we know them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to kill them. Then with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the chief of the sovereign's guard, the head guard, who had gone out to kill the wise ones of Babel. Then with counsel and wisdom, where do you think Daniel got his counsel and wisdom? From the understanding of the scriptures. He was doctrinally oriented. He was scripturally oriented. That's wisdom, Sophia wisdom in the Greek. Can't think of the Hebrew word right now. It's been too long since I studied it in Hebrew. But with counsel and wisdom, Daniel answered Arioch, the chief of the sovereign's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise ones of Babel. He answered and said to Arioch, the sovereign's officer, why is the decree from the sovereign so urgent? So Arioch made the decision known to Daniel. And Daniel went in and asked the sovereign to give him time, and he would show the sovereign his interpretation. God reveals Nebuchadnezzar's dream to Daniel and his companions in Daniel 2:17. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions. Those are their names they were given in Babylon in Aramaic, to seek compassion from the Elah of the heavens. Elah, we would say El or Elohim, the Elah of the heavens, concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions should not perish with the rest of the wise ones of Babel. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision, and Daniel blessed the Elah of the heavens. And Daniel responded and said, blessed be the name of Elah forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changes the times and the seasons. He removes sovereigns and raises up sovereigns. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who possess understanding. And knowledge to those who possess understanding. You see, the key to all understanding, all knowledge of God is to those who possess understanding. And you receive understanding by that scriptural orientation so that you can hear God speaking when he speaks about his word and through his word and to the individual. He reveals deep and secret matters. He knows what is in the darkness, and light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O Elah of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we ask of you, for you have made known to us the sovereign's matter. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the sovereign had appointed to destroy the wise ones of Babel. He went and said this to him, do not destroy the wise ones of Babel. Bring me in before the sovereign, and I shall so show the interpretation to the sovereign. Now Daniel interprets the dream. He first reveals the dream, and then he interprets it. Daniel 2:31 in your notes. You, O sovereign, were looking on and saw a great image. This great image and its brightness excellent was standing before you, and its form was awesome. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of potter's clay. You were looking on until a stone was cut out without hands. A stone was cut out without hands. And it smote the image on its feet of iron and potter's clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the potter's clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. And the wind took them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled all the earth. This is the dream and its interpretation we declare before the sovereign. Well, I guess we don't need to read this part because you all understand everything that was said in the dream itself, right? No, you have to have explanation by a teacher, and Daniel is the teacher in this case. You, O sovereign, are a sovereign of sovereigns, a king of kings. For the Elah of the heavens has given you a reign, power, and strength, and preciousness. And wherever the children of men dwell, or the beasts of the fields and the birds of heaven, he has given them into your hand and has made you ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. Okay, well, here is the Babylonian Empire. You can see it here highlighted, and it extends all the way from Egypt over into Iran, up into the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, through a great deal of the land of Asia, Turkey, as we know it. It covers Israel, Jordan, Syria, Iraq. And of course, you see in the yellow there, the city of Babylon there at the head of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And that's his empire. Now, here is the statue that he saw. The head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, the belly of brass, the legs of iron, the feet and toes, part iron and part potter's clay. We'll look at the meaning of those as we go along here. And after you rises up another reign lower than yours, and another third reign of bronze that rules over all the earth. So what have we learned so far? That he's the head of gold. Another one rises up after him. So that would be the breast and arms of silver. And then a third one after that, the belly of and thighs of brass, the third kingdom. And the fourth reign is as strong as iron, because iron crushes and shatters everything. So like iron that breaks in pieces, it crushes and breaks all these. So these are the successions of conquering emperors and empires in the Middle of the East from all the way back into the 900s before the time of the Messiah. Yet, as you saw, the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, the reign is to be divided. But some of the strength of the iron is to be in it, because you saw the iron mixed with muddy clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of clay, so the reign is partly strong and partly brittle. So we see that this kingdom shall be not as strong as the previous kingdoms of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, or it's better Macedonia, because it started in Macedonia with Alexander the Great. And then Rome. Rome is the Iron Kingdom. So let's go ahead and look at them. The head of gold, that's the Babylonian Empire. And then the breast and arms of silver, that's the Medo-Persian Empire, the second empire to take over. Third, the belly and thighs of brass. That's the Greco-Macedonian kingdom of Alexander the Great. The legs of iron, the great Roman Empire. Okay? The feet and the toes are yet to be determined. The feet and the toes are a kingdom that we will see comes out of the area of the Roman Empire, but is not the Roman Empire. And despite what this slide shows, it's not the 10 nations of the European Common Market. And we'll identify that as we go through the additional kingdoms so that you can see from whence it arises. And as you saw iron mixed with muddy clay, they are mixing themselves with the seed of men, but they are not clinging to each other, even as iron does not mix with the clay. In other words, they are forming alliances, but these alliances are not steady. There are 10 toes, so there are 10 entities, kingdoms, nations that are entering into this alliance, but some of them are weak, the potter's clay, some of them are strong, the iron, and they don't get along well in their alliance. Okay? They have differences. And in the days of these sovereigns, the Elah of the heavens shall set up a reign, a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, nor the kingdom pass on to other people. See, all of these passed on to other people. It crushes and puts to an end all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. Because you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great Elah has made known to the sovereign what shall be after this. And the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. Then sovereign Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face and did obeisance before Daniel, and gave orders to present to him an offering and incense. The sovereign answered Daniel and said, "Truly your Elah is the Elah of Elohim, the God of gods, the master of the sovereigns, the master of the kings of the earth, and a revealer of secrets, since you were able to reveal this secret." Then the sovereign made Daniel great, gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over all the province of Babel, and the chief of the nobles over all the wise ones of Babel. And Daniel asked of the sovereign, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the work of the province of Babel, so that Daniel could remain in the gate of the sovereign. Daniel did not want to go to the province and rule. He wanted to remain in the king's court. So Daniel asked the sovereign if Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could go and administer the province on Daniel and the king's behalf. All right. So now let's look at the image again. This time the image that Nebuchadnezzar makes, following after his dream. Okay. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. Okay. So each cubit is an inch. So it was 6 inches wide. And no, not that couldn't be right. Okay. It was like 12 and a half feet wide and 125 feet tall. So about 12 stories tall and 12 and a half feet wide. That's this image. Of course, his was made out of all gold. Why? Because it represented him. He did not want to represent the other kingdoms that Daniel had revealed to him would succeed him. This was all about him. And because it was all about him, we see what he does next. He made a 60 cubit high, 6 cubits wide. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Oh, I left that part out. So what he did, he said, actually, the satraps, those who were rulers with Daniel, and now Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they had Nebuchadnezzar make a law, a kingly edict, that anyone who would not fall down and worship the statue would be killed, by being thrown into the lion's den. And you know that story, Daniel in the lion's den. Well, this was a trick by those jealous of Daniel because of his chief place in the eyes of Nebuchadnezzar. And it was a trick because they knew that Daniel would not bow down and worship a statue because he was a follower of Yahuwah, the Elah of Elahs, the king, the Lord over all. So they tricked the sovereign who loved Daniel into making this edict, so that when the time came for the horns, the shofars, the harps, all of the musical instruments to play, and all the people bow down and worship the image, guess who did not? Daniel. So they ran to the king and said, guess what we found? We found out that Daniel did not worship your image, and therefore he has to be killed. And Nebuchadnezzar said, oh no, I cannot bring my own edict. That would not serve well in the kingdom. So he sought hope that Daniel would survive. And he prayed to Yahuwah, to that Yahuwah would protect Daniel. Daniel was thrown in the lion's den, and early the next morning, Nebuchadnezzar ran to the lion's den and had the stone rolled away to see that Daniel was still alive, because he loved Daniel and respected him. So that's the part I left out because it was a lot of text and we don't have that much time. Okay, now we jump ahead to Daniel 7. Now Belshazzar is now the king of Babel. He's one of the sons of Nebuchadnezzar, and he doesn't remember much about the things that Daniel had done. So in the first year of Belshazzar, sovereign of Babel, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, giving a summary of the matters. He took notes, as everyone who's in a Bible class should do. Daniel spoke and said, I was looking in my vision by night and saw the four winds of the heavens stirring up the great sea. The great sea, that will play a part in our future studies as well. So remember to make a note of that. And 4 great beasts came up from the sea. 4 great beasts came up from the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I was looking until its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and it was given a man's heart. Let's not enlarge upon that at this time. Just enough to tell you that the lion was the kingdom of Babylon. Its wings were plucked off because it was defeated. It was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man and given a man's heart. This is the prediction of the man becoming like a beast and eating like a beast for, was it 7 years? Actually, I don't even remember that part of it. But it's a prophecy that we're not going to look into because it doesn't concern the beast and the Antichrist. And see another beast, a second, like a bear. And it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said this to it, arise, devour much flesh. After this, I looked and saw another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. Okay, I did not tell you. The second beast that looked like a bear, that's Medo-Persia. This third one, that's a leopard with 4 wings like a bird on its back, that's Alexander the Great's Greco-Macedonian Empire. The reason that it has 4 wings like a bird is because of his 4 generals that were part of the Blitzkrieg. This is where the Second World War term Blitzkrieg by the Germans was originated. Alexander was like a Blitzkrieg. He had 35,000 soldiers and beat millions of the enemy because of the speed and cunning with which they moved. Now let's jump back up to verse 5. The one that was raised up on one side, that was the Medo-Persian, and the Persian side was the greater side, and the 3 ribs were 3 nations that it had conquered and coming in its rise to power. Okay. Now remember, this is a dream of the future that Daniel is having. None of this has taken place yet. Only King Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire are in existence at this time. Okay. It had 4 heads, and rule was given to it. The 4 heads are the 4 generals. Now let's go ahead and look at them in order. So this is the Babylonian Empire. You see its extent. Then we go to the Medo-Persian Empire. You see it has Assyria and Media and Persia and Egypt, and extends over into Egypt, up into Macedonia, up into the area between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, all the way over to India, not including India, but over to India. Huge empire. the largest empire in history up to that time. Now here is the empire of Alexander the Great, and you can see that it pretty much takes over the Medo-Persian Empire. It's outlined there in reddish color, and it is divided up into different groups for the 4 generals who succeed Alexander, who died of alcoholism at the age of 32 or 35, depending on who you read, because of his depression over the fact that there was nothing left to conquer. So he was depressed. His life was military conquest. Because there was no conquest left for him, he drank himself to death. After this, I looked in the night visions and saw a 4th beast, fearsome and burly, exceedingly strong, and it had great iron teeth. Remember what the Iron Kingdom was? Rome, the Roman Empire. It devoured and crushed and trampled down the rest with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. Aha, here's a 10-horn reference we're going to see coming up later. Here's the 4 horns. I'm sorry, I didn't show that to you. Here are the 4 horns of the he-goat that started off with 1 horn. That was Alexander the Great. That horn was broken off when he died. And the 4 horns that took over were Seleucus, Ptolemy, Lysimachus, and Cassander. Those were the 4 generals who divided up that kingdom that I showed you in this map. And it's difficult to see on this map, but there are 4 areas where they divided up Alexander's kingdom. And then this is an easier view of those 4 kingdoms. You see over on the west by Egypt, that was one of the kingdoms. That was to Ptolemaeus. The light blue up in the area of Macedonia and Greece, that was the Antigonid kingdom. The purple areas that are partly in Greece, partly along the coast of the Black Sea, those were given to other Greek states, and Seleucid had the green area, the main big area. And I don't know how well you see that in the green on your screen. Hopefully you see it well. That's the large area. It contains Bactria, Persis, Parthia. Parthia is the name I couldn't think of last week of the bowmen that rode on the white horses and turn around backwards to shoot the enemy that they had drawn out of cover. So those, that's the Parthians in that area. They were a major part of the Medo-Persian Empire and also this part of the empire. Look at this empire. Notice that it does not go up between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, up towards Russia. Russia is not part of any of these kingdoms. And I'll just quickly dispel the false prophetic words of the last few centuries, that at least the last 2 centuries, that Russia is the Antichrist. They are not. It is not. It was never part of any of these kingdoms. And as we'll see, the Antichrist comes out of the last kingdom. I was thinking about the horns, then saw another horn, a little one, coming up among them, and 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots before it. I think I'll just jump ahead here to, let's go to this illustration. This is that leopard beast of Revelation. Notice that it has 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay. Now let's look at, here are the 4 beasts: lion, Babylon, the bear, Medo-Persia, the leopard, Greece, and the beast of Rome. And here they are related to the Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And we'll look at those in greater detail as we move along. These are the horns. And if you note, as I pointed out, the little horn in our opening slide, our title slide, there's a little horn growing up right behind the big horn that is out front of the head of the leopard, lion, leopard, whatever he is, beast. Okay. And how many heads are there for this beast? 4. 4. So how many horns were there? 4. 1 for each of the 4 heads of the empire of Greece, Macedonia. Okay. So did the little horn grow up on the head of the bear? Did it grow up on the head of the, well, let's go back to them and then you can see what I'm talking about. Did it grow up out of horns on the lion, which was Babylon? Did it grow up on the head of the bear? And later we find out in chapter 8 that Daniel sees the he-goat for Medo-Persia. It has 2 horns. It did not grow any more horns. Then we have the 4 horns next of Alexander the Great's Greek Empire. It was known at that time, later in chapter 8, as the he-goat with a single horn, And then you have the terrible beast of Rome with its hips and legs. And then, of course, the last beast at the bottom is the beast of the 10 toes that is not identified exactly, precisely. All right, so those are the only place that a little horn grows out of from among 4 horns is the Greek, the Macedonian, the Greek Macedonian Empire of Alexander the Great. And that little horn is said, remember in my introduction before we started the notes, I said that he is known in Isaiah as the king of Babylon, the Assyrian. Well, if you look at this map, you will see that Babylon and Assyria are in this general's dominion of the Greek Macedon Empire that was left over from from Philip's son, Alexander the Great. So what do we know about the Antichrist from this point? He comes from that green area there, and he's called the Assyrian and the king of Babylon. So those are major clues that we will see in our understanding of who the Antichrist is. Okay, the little one coming up among them. And 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots before it. This Antichrist figure, this little horn beast, overruns the 3 other horns of the 4. And see, eyes like the eyes of a man were in this horn, and a mouth speaking great words. So this little horn had eyes and a mouth, and it was speaking great words. We'll see that happen in the book of Revelation when we get there. Daniel 7:9. This is a little rabbit trail that Daniel follows to show what he saw in heaven. I was looking until thrones were set up and the Ancient of Days was seated. So there was a council meeting. Remember, we studied that when we looked at the divine council of the sons of God, the B'nai Ha-Elohim. Then they all sat around on these thrones, and God himself, Yahuwah, sat as the Ancient of Days at the head throne. But this is taking place in heaven. He was seated, his garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like clean wool. His throne was flames of fire, its wheels burning fire. I think Isaiah had a vision of that. A stream of fire was flowing and coming forth from his presence, and 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judge was seated, and the books were opened. So this is a future judgment that will take place that we know as the Great White Throne Judgment at the end of the book of Revelation. I was looking then, because of the sound of the great words which the horn was speaking, back to the little horn, I was looking until the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning fire. What happens to the Antichrist at the end of time? He's thrown into the lake of fire. And the rest of the beasts had their rule taken away. The rest of the beasts had their rule taken away. So those are the other B'nai Ha-Elohim, or they are the second beast that came out of the land that we know as the false prophet, but it says beast, so there had to be more than one. But a lengthening of life was given to these, what I interpret as being the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the lesser gods, the sons of God, the gods of the divine rulership of Yahuwah, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords and God of gods. Okay? So they're not done away with right away, but the all right, so let's go to the Son of Man is given dominion. I was looking in the night visions and saw one like the son of Enosh, the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of the heavens. You all probably know that verse in the 17th 18th chapter of Revelation, coming with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient of Days, came to his Father Yahuwah, and they brought him near before him. And to him was given rulership and preciousness and a reign, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His rule is an everlasting rule, which shall not pass away, and his reign that which shall not be destroyed. This is the rule of the stone cut out of the mountain without hands. The mountain, of course, is Zion. That stone is the rock, Jesus Christ. So Daniel's vision is now interpreted. He has this vision and he says, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was pierced within my body, and the visions of my head alarmed me. I drew near to one of those who stood by and asked him the certainty of all this. And he spoke to me and made known to me the interpretation of the matters. These great beasts, which are four sovereigns which rise up from the earth. Then the set apart ones of the Most High shall receive the reign, the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I desired for certainty concerning the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, very fearsome, with its teeth of iron, its nails of bronze, which devoured, crushed, and trampled down the rest with its feet. What does that sound like? That sounds like the bear, right? So it has the characteristics of the other beasts, it being the fourth beast that Daniel could not even identify because it was made up of all of the previous beasts. The lion, the bear, the leopard, and the Roman beast. And concerning the 10 horns, there are these 10 horns again that were on its head. And of the other horn that came up, before which 3 fell, this horn, which had eyes and a mouth which spoke great words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. So he is the greatest one of all that we have just seen Daniel have interpreted to him. I was looking, and this horn was fighting against the saints, the set apart ones, and was prevailing against them until the Ancient of Days came, and right ruling was given to the set apart ones of the Most High. And the time came, and the set apart ones took possession of the kingdom. Okay? So you see bits and pieces of the book of Revelation revealed in Daniel's vision. This is what he said. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom on earth, which is different from all other kingdoms, and it devours all the land, all of the land. Remember when we talked about Nimrod and the Tower of Babel? There's that Babel again, the Tower of Babel. How did God divide up the nations when he scattered people? According to the number of the B'nai Ha-Elohim, the godly council. Okay, so each of those nations had a son of God, angelic son of God, we would call them angels, an angelic head over the nation. And remember, we looked at a map of all of those nations. And you remember where they were found. Oops. Oh my. Let's go back here and my third computer lost its place. Okay. So they went from the area along the Mediterranean Sea, up into north of that and into the green area, not all the way over. Okay. That's where those nations were set up. And the 10 horns are 10 sovereigns from this kingdom. They shall rise, and another shall rise after them. And it is different from the first ones. It's the little horn, and it humbles 3 sovereigns. And it speaks words against the Most High, and it wears out the set apart ones of the Most High. And it intends to change appointed times and the law. So who do you think this is? The Antichrist, who comes into Israel as its military friend, having won the wars that we have looked at, the Red Horse War, and he's now aligning himself with Israel, makes a covenant with them for how long? 7 years. And here you see it. He wears out the set apart ones of the Most High, speaks words against the Most High, and it intends to change the appointed times and the law. And they are given into its hand for a time, 1 year, times 2 years, and a half a time, half a year, which is 3.5 years. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away its rule, to cut off and to destroy until the end. And the reign and the rulership and the greatness of the reigns under all the heavens shall be given to the people. The people are the people of Israel, the set apart ones, the saints of the Most High, the saints of Yahuwah. Okay? His reign is an everlasting reign, and all rulerships shall serve and obey him. This is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly alarmed me, and my color changed, and I kept the matter in my heart. Okay, time for a break. It's 12:04 Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So we'll come back at 1/4 after and finish the next 100 slides.